All right, let's validate our call admission control configuration. To do this, you'll want to have the Lync Server 2010 resource kit tools downloaded and installed. So on this machine, I have that. So add-on C, program files, Lync Server 2010 or Microsoft Lync Server 2010 res kits. There's a nice little utility in here called the Network Configuration Viewer. And this will give you a really good graphical representation of your call admission control policy. So let's go ahead and download that. Because when you're in the control panel, it's really hard to kind of visualize what you've just set up. So this is really kind of a nice thing. And you can start off by drawing something similar and then implementing this stuff as you go through the console. So again, if you were doing a configuration where you had a couple of subsites of a specific region like Arizona, Phoenix and Tucson inside that region with subnets associated with them. If you click on info here, you'll see the subnet IDs that are associated with the sites. So different networks for each site, and then basically a bandwidth policy in between. So essentially we're doing for audio, 2 megabytes between both sites is acceptable for all audio calls, or for an individual call, 160K. So if it exceeds either one of those values, in this case, we'll simply block the call. Since we only have one region, we can't do any kind of audio or video redirection because we don't have multiple regions. So we're basically looking at this from the perspective of a smaller deployment with just basically one central site, although we might have some users connecting to Lync from one or more remote sites. So let's validate this configuration. Let's go ahead and pull up another tool. So inside the same folder here in ResKit, if you go into Bandwidth Utilization Analyzer, Bandwidth Policy Server Monitor and run the PDP-Mon UI, this will actually show you the amount of bandwidth that's being used and where it applies in your bandwidth policies. So it takes a second for it to load up here. And notice that it's saying call admission control is not enabled in your topology. So you will not see any updates. So what we've done so far, if we go back into the console, we've created a policy profile in a region. We've associated a couple of sites and we've defined the subnet information for those sites. We even went into the shell and created an inter-site policy link, but we never enabled call admission control. So what we want to do is go to the global policy and enable call admission control. So I'll go ahead and commit that. Again, you'll need to wait for Lync to catch up. You can come over to topology. Basically, you're looking for these red X's to turn green, everything except for the Exchange server in this case, which is our unified messaging server. But go ahead and do a refresh until these turn green. And there we go. So let's, now that that's up to date, let's restart the application. This time it fires up without any warning, so that's good. So we'll drill down and take a look at this particular server. We just have one server in our topology. And so here we can see that our inter-site link between Phoenix and Tucson is showing up here. Right now, we don't have any calls going. So we've got 0 for audio bandwidth used, 0 for video bandwidth used. On a bigger monitor with a better resolution, you would actually see the percentages all on one screen. But we've got nothing going on right now, so let's simulate this. Let's go ahead and fire up a call between 2 endpoints. So what I'm going to do off screen, you won't see this. I'm going to initiate a call from a user in Phoenix to a user in Tucson, and we'll be able to see that reflected in here. So I'm switching over now. Okay, so I just initiated a call between 2 machines, and I hit this Update Now button up here at the way top right. You can see here that the audio bandwidth used is 91K. And if you scroll over to the right, that's 4% of our pipe. So that's just one call. And remember, I had the single session cranked up to 160. Now, if I were to go back into the bandwidth policy and crank that down to say 40, that would be reflected in here. So let's take a look at this. Let's go into network configuration under policy profile. And I can actually change the individual session limit. Like, let's say I change it to 50. So I'll change it to 50 and commit that. And then I'll check my topology until all of these turn green and refresh. And what I'll do is I'll establish another call after that's taken effect. Then I'll re-update this and we'll take a look and see if these numbers change. Okay, so let's click on update. And as you can see here, now that I've got a new call going, notice that the audio bandwidth used now is 50K. And if you scroll over, we're only using 2%. So that is a way that you can kind of reduce the amount of traffic that's going across And, if you got up to the point here where this was at 100% of the entire pipe use, then we can just give the user a message that says, hey, the network is too congested or something along those lines, and explain to them that they basically need to wait before they can place that call. So it keeps you from burying the WAN. But really the best way to test this is to go out and download that resource kit tools. Make sure you check out this bandwidth policy service monitor to help you troubleshoot and see these policies in place.